There are people who can walk into a room and instantly become what the room needs. They are friendly, warm, adaptable. They know how to smile at the right moment. They know how to ask the right questions. They know how to make others feel comfortable. And yet, almost no one truly knows them. Not because they are fake, not because they are hiding something dark, but because access to them is earned, not given. This is the psychology of emotional privacy. There are people who have mastered what could be called layered identity. On the surface, there is the social self, polite, approachable, light. It speaks about daily life, about common interests, about things that don't risk too much. Beneath that, there is another layer. Opinions that are more nuanced, emotions that are more complex, dreams that feel almost too personal to say out loud, and deeper still, there is a private interior world. A space of contradictions, tenderness, intensity, doubt, imagination. A space that not everyone is allowed to enter. Some people move through life with these layers carefully arranged, not as a performance, but as protection. They learned early that not every space is safe for full authenticity. Not every person can hold complexity without trying to simplify it. Not every connection is deep enough to handle truth without reshaping it. So they adapted. There are people who can talk for hours and still reveal nothing essential. They can tell stories, they can laugh, they can share experiences, but the core, the emotional core, remains untouched. To outsiders, they seem open. To themselves, they know the difference between expression and exposure. Expression is sharing thoughts. Exposure is revealing vulnerability. And emotional privacy is the art of knowing which one is happening. Some people have what could be called trust thresholds. They do not immediately open up when someone is kind. They do not automatically share their inner life because someone asks. They observe. They notice how others respond to small disclosures. They test the waters with lighter truths before offering heavier ones. They watch how people handle responsibility, confidentiality, nuance. Trust for them is not a feeling, it is a pattern. Consistency builds access, safety builds access, emotional maturity builds access, and until those patterns are clear, the deeper layers remain closed. Not out of arrogance, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect. There are people who feel deeply, almost excessively, and yet appear calm. They can sit in a group and seem composed, while internally processing layers of meaning. They replay conversations later. They analyze tone shifts. They sense undercurrents others ignore. Because of this depth, they cannot afford to be emotionally careless. If they let everyone in, they would feel everything. Every projection, every misunderstanding, every dismissal. So they choose carefully. To some, this selectiveness looks distant, to others, mysterious, but internally it feels like survival. There is often a history behind emotional privacy, moments when vulnerability was met with minimization, when sincerity was misunderstood, when intensity was labeled too much. After enough of those experiences, something shifts. Instead of becoming colder, some people become quieter. Instead of withdrawing from humanity, they refine access. They learn to be warm without being exposed, engaged without being transparent, present without being entirely visible. They understand something subtle. Not everyone deserves the real them. And that realization is not bitterness, it is discernment. There are people who are deeply relational, but selectively intimate. They value connection. They crave meaningful conversation. They want to be understood, but they would rather have one person who truly sees them than a crowd who only knows the outline. So they move slowly. They allow others to know their humor first, then their preferences, then their perspectives. Only later, sometimes much later, do they reveal their fears, their private hopes, their unpolished thoughts, because for them emotional intimacy is sacred, and sacred things are not placed on public display. At the core of emotional privacy is something very simple: self-worth. There are people who do not need to prove their depth by displaying it. They do not need constant validation for their emotions. They do not need everyone to understand them. They are comfortable being partially unseen because they know who they are, even if most people only know the outline. There is a quiet confidence in that, a stability that comes from internal validation rather than external exposure. And yet, emotional privacy is not isolation. There are always a few, a very small circle, people who passed the silent tests without knowing they were being tested, people who handled smaller truths gently, people who listened without correcting, who validated without dramatizing, who respected boundaries without trying to cross them. With them, the deeper layers open, slowly, carefully, but fully. And when that happens, it is profound, because emotionally private individuals love deeply. They attach meaningfully. They commit sincerely. They just do not do it often. In many ways, emotional privacy is an advanced relational skill. It requires self-awareness. It requires pattern recognition. It requires restraint. It asks a person to tolerate being misunderstood by many in order to be truly understood by a few. And that is not easy. There is a certain loneliness in being complex, in knowing that most interactions only scratch the surface. But there is also dignity in it, a quiet dignity. Some people will never see the full interior. They will know the polite version, the competent version, the agreeable version, and that is fine, because access was never meant to be universal. The real self, the unfiltered thoughts, the hidden tenderness, the intensity, is not withheld out of fear. It is preserved out of value. There are people listening to this who have often wondered why they can connect with many, but feel fully known by so few, who have questioned whether something is wrong with them for being selective, for hesitating, for needing time. But perhaps nothing is wrong. Perhaps what exists is discernment. Perhaps what exists is depth. Perhaps what exists is a personality structure that understands something fundamental. The self is not a public resource. It is a private landscape, and only those who walk it gently are invited to stay. Emotional privacy is not about hiding. It is about honoring complexity, honoring sensitivity, honoring the truth that some parts of a person are too valuable to be exposed to careless hands. There are people who live this way quietly, who move through the world warm but measured, open but selective, kind but internally protected. And while many may only see the surface, the depth remains intact, intentional, and entirely their own.